The goal of this show is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. And we do that every single week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. And every once in a while, we work with agencies to craft an agency break-in, a deep dive into what it's like working at top agencies and why CMOs should take notice. For this special agency break-in series, we're featuring M+C SAATCHI North America, a global creative solutions company built to help brands navigate complexity, connect with culture, and move at the speed of today's consumers. And let's clear something up. This is not Saatchi and Saatchi. M+C SAATCHI North America is an independent, globally recognized network of specialist agencies that brings together creative, consulting, media, and data expertise to help brands thrive. So we're sharing exclusive interviews with their leadership over the next few days. Please keep on following along. You're going to love this. Today, we're sitting down with Stevie Archer, Chief Creative Officer of M+C SAATCHI North America. Stevie is amazing. She's an award-winning creative leader. She's a strategist, brand storyteller, all in one. And she's built her career crafting work that's not just like your standard advertising, but it earns a place in culture. And the big one that we talk about is how she shaped brands like Iceland tourism. And she creates viral, disruptive campaigns to her deep dive expertise in turning brands into cultural powerhouses. So she's going to bring a bold perspective on all of this, on creativity, especially in today's rapidly evolving landscape. More specifically, we're going to talk about cultural power, how brands can develop cultural power and break through in a fragmented media landscape. We're going to talk about when and why brands should make bold creative shifts and how aspiring creatives can sharpen their instincts, sell ideas, and build a standout career. And of course, we're going to get into some of the weirdest and most interesting cultural moments happening right now, including Jack's favorite, the Costco guys. So Stevie is one of the most passionate, no BS creative leaders in the industry, and you don't want to miss this conversation. If you want to learn more about working with M+C SAATCHI North America, you can visit their website, or you can email isabella.pierangelo at mcsaatchi.com. We'll put that in the description as well. Now let's get into it. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Stevie Archer, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How are you doing today?
I am good. It's been a busy 2025, and we're in month 2, so I'm good.
Yeah, it's only month 2.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Let that sink in.
Yeah.
Let that sink in.
That's a good point. Well, that's good. Busy is good. I'm excited to talk with you. We've been at the M+C SAATCHI office now for the past 2 days, exploring the different people, what it's like to work here, maybe then understanding for brands what it's like to work with you all as well. So from the employee side and to the potential market or like partners that you all have. Yeah. So it's been really fun. We had Naja on yesterday, fantastic leader, so we got some context there. But now it's time to talk with you. So can you tell us your role, what you're doing at M+C SAATCHI North America?
Yeah, so I am the newly minted Chief Creative Officer of M+C SAATCHI North America, and essentially my job is to sort of be the, I'm going to say this in very fancy terms, the beacon of creative excellence for North America for M+C SAATCHI. And what that means in slightly less fancy terms is at the end of the day, I'm responsible for making sure all of the work that comes out of this region is as epic, cut through, breakthrough, and compellingly creative as it can possibly be, so that it achieves awesome, amazing, incredible, effective results for all the clients that we work with.
And you've done that before.
I've done it before.
You know what's going on. So, yeah. And then you said it was newly minted, correct?
Yes.
So congrats on that.
Yeah,
so.
It means more work, more things, more responsibilities, more love, more creativity.
Do you still get into the weeds a little bit? Do you move some stuff around, or is it more now strategy, looking more holistically?
You know, it's a little bit of both. I don't think most creative people you can ever fully be like fully divorced from the craft that you like cultivated for your career, because at the best of our days, we're still like antsy to make things. So I do a little bit of both, helping direct teams, helping give feedback, helping, shape work, doing all of that stuff, as well as then sort of shaping like what our strategy is and agency are and how we, work for clients too. So it's both.
I like that. So let's talk about like the shaping of the agency narrative and the positioning statement. Can you tell us what it is? I got my notes here. It says cultural power. Is that correct?
Cultural power. That is correct.
And what does that mean for brands and how you all shape work creatively?
Well, what it means for brands is, for eons in advertising, it was easy for brands to sort of buy influence and buy interruptiveness and buy attention. And that is no longer the shape of the world as it is today. You can in some cases be interruptive, and you can buy it when you're in certain positions and you have the largest budgets and you're certain levels of brands. But the reality is, for brands to truly be impactful and to truly cut through and really reach people in sort of a fragmented media environment where you can't as easily just buy attention, is you have to have cultural power in a way that you can wield it differently. So you have to be present in social conversations, you have to be present in news, you have to be present in society, culture, and chat groups with friends. That's how you create visibility in new ways, and that's how you sort of wield the power of your brand. And in order to do that, you sort of have to understand the cultural landscape, where brands fit into it, why you're adding value to what's going on in people's lives, and how you make work that doesn't just show up in traditional ad-like interruptive ways, but is in non-traditional additive conversational ways as much as all of it, and look at that as a whole picture. And when you do that and you give a brand cultural power like that, then what I like to also call it, it's like you're now Beyonce. You can create a ripple effect around you as an organization in a way that like now you're being paid attention to, now you're part of culture, now you're part of people's lives in a way that you weren't before.
I like that you put in the Beyonce example. I was gonna ask then, like, what's like a brand that you feel like has a lot of cultural power right now, maybe this past week or this year, or top of mind, that you really admire?
I mean, it's easy to point to like a celebrity person as a person who has cultural power. As far as brands, give me a second to think about that. Who do I think has cultural power right now?
Nike with the Super Bowl. I mean, you said
yeah,
you
it's
can't
interesting.
Really, I feel like that's like one spot where you can kind of buy like that moment, but you still have to do something creative and like tap into culture at that moment. And also to get to have the budgets to pay for an $8 million slot, you have to have cultural power all the way through to get to that level usually.
Yeah, and I mean, that's Super Bowl is an interesting example of like showing up in a way to have cultural power. Of course, again, like you said, it's buying $8 million worth of time. Nike's sort of been on their back foot, no pun intended, for the last couple years. They switched to like a pretty performance-driven strategy. There's been lots and lots of news articles about the changing of the guard and their CEO and all that kind of stuff, and where they've taken a wrong turn. The work that they did during the Super Bowl, that was sort of focused on female athletes and tapped into sort of the mindset of like what female athletes in a moment where they're getting talked about a lot more are experiencing. That is an example of a brand using that time and attention and presence to make a statement in a different way, rather than just show up in, look at my shoes or look at my performance, or just show me the same old, male athletes that you've been, banking on for the last, 50 years. So it is an example of them trying to reclaim some of that cultural power and be relevant again in ways that they haven't maybe been as great at in the last couple years.
And I was going to bring up as well, another example would be one of your past campaigns, Looks Like You Need Iceland, and how these aren't just they're like creating these cultural moments. So what's your approach to creating work that stands out and gets people talking?
It's so easy. It's so simple. Iceland was an interesting example because it's a country that, is tiny. It's 300,000 people. It's a tiny little dot on the global map out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean near the Arctic Circle. So to try to give a literal place like that any cultural presence and power is a pretty steep uphill battle when, you don't have the budget and the might and the cultural presence of like, United States or France or Australia, where their greatest exports are cultural. Their greatest things, we see their movies, we see their language, they're in the news, they have massive tourism budgets. So our approach with them was everything that we did had to sort of punch above its weight and get outsized global attention. So as part of that, the way we approached it is, and many tourism accounts are constructed this way, is you have to think long-term first. You have to think brand platform first. What is the North Star that we're going to hang everything on from a brand narrative perspective that can last up to 5 years? Mm-hmm. So we started there and started with an insight where, Iceland is an incredibly unique place. You don't often get a product that's so differentiated and so unique, but they have all of those ingredients. It's landscapes like you've never seen. It's people and culture that is super unique. They have a very dry sense of humor. They've got a very resilient attitude. They're incredibly optimistic. They're super funny. They're very, very creative. And it's a destination where you can have so many different kinds of experiences all in one place that is progressive and very different from what a lot of the rest of the world has to offer. And in the moment in time that we started working on that, we latched on to that notion that Iceland could kind of be this relief and antidote for all of the rest of the world. So uniquely in the global landscape, they are antidote to what the world is throwing at us. That led us to this platform narrative, Looks Like You Need Iceland, that then essentially gave us the permission over time to show up anytime the world needed a emotional vacation, so to speak, from what was going on around us. They could sort of be that answer. And so then over the course of 3 years, we showed up in not ad-like ways, but in earned media ways, creating stories and narratives, beginning with COVID. That was our first foray into launching work for them. Taking you back in your mental time machine to June of 2020, we were locked in our houses. We couldn't go anywhere. We were freaking out. Everybody all over the world was like pent up anxiety and frustration. So we put 7 speakers in the 7 regions of Iceland and let people scream their guts out.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Anywhere in the world. When Mark Zuckerberg launched the metaverse, a couple years later, and people were like, I don't want this like headset virtual reality existence to be who we are anymore. 12 days later, we released the Icelandverse with a Mark Zuckerberg Icelandic lookalike, nice. And got global news attention from politicians and Mark Zuckerberg himself. We trolled him so hard he showed up in Iceland 3 months later.
Incredible.
And, we've even come recently when people are feeling the pressures of hybrid work, where you can't ever turn your phone off, you can't ever escape, you have Zoom and Teams and all the things following you all the time. We wanted to give people a way to get out of that. So we created Outhorse Your Email. When people needed that, we got Icelandic horses to write out of office replies on a real horse-sized keyboard, because why not? Horses love to type and they're great at it. So we let them do that.
It's incredible. So the what was the North Star again for this whole campaign?
The North Star was always Looks Like You Need Iceland. And every time when we'd show up, it was in a moment of need and we'd solve it in a way that only Iceland could.
Love it. And there's a lot of those moments, it seems like. So that's a big idea.
Needy.
Yeah.
People are needy.
Like the big idea is so reactive to culture, cultural power. All of this makes sense. So I think, and the speed of which culture is moving, it's fast. Many brands struggle to keep up. So what's your advice for brands that want to stay ahead while staying true to their identity? I have a feeling it's something about like a North Star, developing that, but I want to hear your insights.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, when you're trying to be culturally relevant, but also be true to your brand, you do have to sort of combine what is timeless and true about who you are as an organization, a brand, and whatever you make, offer, do. You have to land that first, and that, as you said, becomes sort of your North Star. That becomes your rules for the road of how you operate and show up in the world from that point forward. Then you apply that to more timely things. So then you say, okay, if I am this North Star, this is what I do, this is my value to people, my value to consumers, this is my point of view. Then you say, now, what's going on in the world? What's going on with people? What are they thinking, feeling, doing, surrounded by? What entertainment are they consuming? What's happening to them? And then you apply that North Star behavior and North Star point of view to those moments. So that's what keeps you consistent over time, even as time is changing all around you.
So then as the CCO for this region, so when the brand, like, are you kind of making those creative decisions, like this is something that we can push the boundaries, we know the brand North Star, we've already helped establish that, or they have it established, how do you come into the mix? Are you pushing, are you reeling back? How do you get involved?
My creative team would probably tell you I'm always pushing, maybe, to their chagrin sometimes. No, I mean, I think you always have to be ambitious with how you creatively show up for any brand in any category, because you can't afford to be ignored. You're paying money to get on people's radar, and if it turns into wallpaper, you won't show up. So sort of my job is to sort of set the ambition for what the work can do, and all along the way make sure that ambition is matched with what our clients need to achieve. It's always underpinned with like a real goal at its core. It's not just creative for creative sake, but it's always meant to like, what's the best way to achieve this goal? What's the most cut through way to reach this consumer? How do we think about this differently? How do we show up in new ways? How do we be surprising and unexpected and compelling every time?
Any tricks you've learned along your career about, cracking like a process or an activity you like to do? If you're, you hit a wall and you can't think of ideas, like, what do you do?
Oh my God, there's so many ways. Like, if any creative person tells you there's only one way to get out of a creative like conundrum or cul-de-sac, we have many.
What do you rock with?
One of the best things, somebody else told me this, is if you're stuck, is to ask yourself the question, what would get me fired? And not because you're trying to get fired, that's not really the goal, but because it forces your brain to sort of reset and go, what is the craziest thing that I could possibly do that I'm not allowing myself to go there right now because maybe it feels off limits? And when you reframe the problem that way and you say, you ask yourself that way, it kind of unlocks new avenues.
Right.
For you to say, well, what if they did do this? And yes, sometimes the ideas that come out of that are things that should never see the light of day, but sometimes they lead you to a place where you go, oh, actually, maybe this wouldn't get me fired. Maybe this would be the greatest thing ever. And so it kind of resets how you think about a problem.
Do you have any other ones like that? Because that was really good. I'm going to write this down.
Other Ways to Get Fired by Stevie Archer. No, I mean, I think in general, like, I also talk to my teams a lot about like my developing an internal editor, an internal mantra as you're creating work. The way I approach doing things, I just start with a Word doc or a piece of paper, whatever whatever implement I start writing, start making ideas, start getting things down. And then I will kind of stop and look back at what I've been doing and go, well, wait, everything I'm doing is a certain way. It's all out of home ideas. It's all that. So what's the opposite of an out of home idea? And I train my internal brain, my internal editor to say, go 180 degrees different. So if everything's out of home, now I make everything digital. If everything's social, now I make everything like analog. If everything's funny, I need to write everything serious. If everything's sentimental, how do I be funny? And I sort of force myself to like, pivot in directions by asking myself and like policing my own process so that I'm generating as many different avenues as possible.
Love it. So you've led a lot of creative work, a lot of rebrands, crisis comms, major creative shifts for companies. When should a brand consider a bold creative shift? When should they do this? How do they know when it's the right time?
Tell me what you mean about a bold creative shift. Like,
let's say like a rebrand or like a change in their North Star or a different direction within their North Star that they haven't ever really gone down.
I mean, I think every brand should always be asking itself, how can I do something boldly? Because if you fall into a pattern of doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, even if you maintain your North Star and even if you do that, eventually what you're creating is, the scientific term would be wear out. People expect it. People start to then expect the same, and it becomes, again, that goes into like wallpaper zone. You have to constantly be surprising people and expressing who you are in new ways Now, if you're talking about, do I overhaul my North Star entirely? I think that comes down to, has it been working for you? Is it still true of who you are as an organization? Are you going in a new strategic direction as a company? Are you selling a new kind of product? Are you facing a new economic or competitive landscape where your offer is no longer reaching your consumer and isn't relevant? Or maybe it was never great to start with and it was the wrong place for you to go. I think that kind of shift comes from like really truly understanding like what are the core problems of your business, what are the ambitions of your business, and what are the core audiences that you're trying to reach in new ways. And only by interrogating that can you say like, yeah, now it's time to pull the plug and go in a new direction.
Brilliant. Love it. I was just thinking about our own business while you're talking about that. So it's definitely sparking some thoughts there. Jack, what do you say?
Did you just try to get some free work right there?
Yeah, I'm gonna have some questions. Let's get the whiteboard going, actually.
Like, let's say you're working on a media company that's in the advertising space.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because now I'm just talking now, but like sometimes brands do throw the baby out with the bathwater a little bit. Like the most famous brands were not made overnight either. They were iterative and they sort of evolved over time. Like Nike was not Nike for the first 10 years it existed. Just Do It did not come about in the first creative meeting that they ever had. It was not on the first ad they ran. So like sometimes finding your way to who your brand is also comes from like enduring and sticking with certain pieces of who you are and letting them play out. I do think in some cases there's a habit in marketing and advertising and a leaning towards like short-termism, which is hard because you never have enough traction or enough momentum behind you to have anybody see who you are consistently before you're then throwing it all out and starting over with something else because you have a quarterly sales result you've got to hit and everything went out the window. So there's a balance. It's a balancing act of like what's working and what can change, and that again comes back to this idea of like who are you at your core, what's your North Star. You get that locked as much as you can, then the stuff around it, the cultural impact, the cultural relevancy, the cultural fluency, that allows you to shift and change, and that's what creates stuff that has like staying power.
Love it. Well, so Stevie, you know this stuff very well. You're the pro here, but for the brands listening, why should they want to work with you and M+C SAATCHI holistically? What do you guys all bring to the table? Learning from you, you know your stuff. But for the whole agency, what's different? How are you guys different from other agencies?
I mean, I think there's a thing happening right now in our industry where you are often as a brand faced with one of two choices. You go with a small boutique-y independent place, or you go with a massive Death Star behemoth that you're going to be a tiny like drop in the ocean of the collective things they care about. And M+C SAATCHI sort of sits right in the middle of that, where we've got the scale of a global network, but the entrepreneurialism and gumption and sort of resourcefulness of an independent, because we are independent, that you don't have to sort of make that choice between like getting lost in the ocean of other AORs or knowing that your agency's paid actors to sit at their desks when you come on a tour, so like you're kind of in that middle space where you get the best of both worlds, and the creative output that can stand on its own with any other massive agency with all the resources and manpower in the world.
Sounds good to me. And then for our young creatives listening, what's like one piece of advice you wish you had earlier in your career?
Ooh, one?
3 is allowed max.
3 is allowed max. Okay, I don't like rules, but I'll try to stick to 3. I think the first thing that you should know as a creative is the number one thing that defines success is not pure talent, it's resilience. Being able to go back to the well over and over and over again is the difference between someone who's going to be successful and someone who isn't. And that's freeing in a way because it means I don't have to get it perfect every time, but I have to show up every time, and that's easier. The second one, because I get 3, as I've been told very clearly, is presentation skills are everything. It doesn't matter if you're a writer, art director, designer, whatever it is, even if your job isn't presentation. Getting your idea out of the room into the next room is the goal that you have. And the best way to do that is to learn how to advocate, present, and make sure people understand what the work is and how it's going to be effective. So presentation. And number 3, you have to find your own voice and have a POV. And that can be really challenging to do when you have many bosses and reviewers and people giving you feedback constantly and telling you how you should be doing things and what your work should be. But the best creatives, what makes them great is they have a sense of what they want to achieve with the work too, and can put that into the work itself. So listening to your inner voice and understanding what makes you think work is great is just as important as listening to everybody else.
Love it. How can people reach out if they want to talk with you, get to connect with you, learn more from you, or the agency holistically?
I don't know. That's a great question. LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn? I guess LinkedIn is great. Another really incredible way to reach me specifically is to make TikToks that appear within my algorithm. I can give you my top 5 interests so that you can ensure that you've accessed it.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. Jack did that. It worked.
Yeah. Apparently, interests included walking down the street in New York and talking about stuff. So that was
producer Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, if you have a hot take on what's going on with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, right in there, you're going to get right at the top of the algorithmic feed.
What is going on there?
It's hard to say. It's a case study in PR. Is really what this is going to be at the end of this. It's like mass manipulation of public sentiment happening on the auspices of a lawsuit. That's what's going on right now.
That leads to a real question.
Okay, Jack.
Thank you, Stevie. How do you keep up to date with culture and trends and things moving at like lightning pace? Do you just have to scroll on TikTok for like an hour before you go to bed every night?
I think I have been sort of a culture junkie and an information junkie. I was just born that way. I was wired that way. Like my favorite things in school were always like history and learning and understanding like patterns and like why things happen, what things affect other things. And I have had a like very, I'm not going to call it a debilitating pop culture habit because I think it's only been facilitating. But for a very long time, I've been really like internet, always online. I also have, though I don't recommend it, insomnia. So at 2 a.m. when you wake up and you're going, I'm not getting to sleep again now, let's find out why people are upset with the latest KitchenAid mixer color. Like, let's find that out on TikTok because they'll tell you.
Was that butter? Was that the
color?
It
is butter. Butter is controversial.
The color of the year?
KitchenAid made a major misstep on the butter mixer. I know.
See, I got some that.
Hot topics.
I'm with it.
Yeah.
No, and then I had another question. Besides insomnia,
something that can be sustainable for others. Yes.
Yeah. When did you realize that you would be in the creative field? I'm always curious. Did you know growing up? You said you were in like history and trends. How did you find out that you really liked the creative side of the world?
So I'm a copywriter by trade. And when I was little, I think it was the product of being the youngest sibling of 2 older brothers and living in a household where I had a lot of very loud, opinionated people. I quickly learned words were sort of the best way to communicate. And even when I was little, I would like write little stories and like poems and things like that. I transparently didn't know that was a job you could have until I got to college. Everyone in my family is in a medical profession of some kind. So the idea of like being any kind of creative person was like, that's not a real thing you do. And so I intended when I got to college, I was like, well, I'll be pre-med. That's like what you do. That's how you make money. That's how you feed your family. That's like how like life works. But I discovered at Chapel Hill. That's where I went to college. They had a journalism school with an advertising program, and I was like reading the syllabus and saw this thing called copywriting, and I thought, oh, that's like lawyer stuff. That's like copyrights, not copywriting. And was reading about it and was like, wait a second, this is a job where they like pay you to write and make ads that like, I don't have to be a starving novelist. I could be a creative person and use this like skill I didn't know what to do with in this way. And like that just was sort of like light bulb moment. And from that moment on, I was like, this is the job for me. I'm going to do this, and threw myself into like every avenue I could to get into it. And unfortunately, I had already signed up for some of the prerequisites for like biology and things like that. So I had to follow through on some of those things. I did not enjoy chemistry, but I can do some, even though I'm a copywriter now. So.
Do you know what is the chemical elements of
H2O,
of salt?
NaCl.
Wow. Okay.
Did you have John Sweeney as a professor?
I did. John Sweeney got me my first internship at an ad agency.
Yeah.
I owe him my career.
He's awesome. I've met him before. UNC's got a great program.
Yeah.
I feel like every school's got like the one professor that has the connections that you have to lean into.
Yeah.
So that was John for you?
That was John for me. He got me, interestingly, I had a copywriting 101 class with him where he told us at the beginning of the class, it was probably like 20 people, 2 of you will get an opportunity to have like a copywriting internship at McKinney, which was one of the first agencies I worked at. And I was like, I will murder people in this room. Like, I will do whatever it takes. Like, there will be bodies on the floor. I did not commit any crimes, but 2 of us got chosen, and I ended up being the only one because the other person actually did decide to go to med school instead. And so I ended up being the only copywriter that year. I had to do it on my own, and McKinney nicely let me like sit in their offices for a semester and pretend I knew what I was doing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Any other questions, Jack, for you? Any questions for us?
I have a question.
Yeah, Jack has questions.
Last one. Is there literally anything that you took from your chemistry, biology, pre-med classes that you ever applied to your career?
Oh, every piece of information in my brain is information on any subject for any reason that I may need to use at any time. So like, I won't say this is like, I did not learn this in school, but I was recently working on a pitch for a very crunchy cracker brand. And it is scientifically proven that crunchy foods, like when you crunch them, like chemicals in your brain light up that make you physically happier. So like they can run people through an MRI machine while they're eating crunchy things, and it like makes the lizard part of our like primordial primitive brains go like, oh my God, this is amazing. So literal crunch is like antidepressant. And so like, that's again, not necessarily information that I learned in my biology class or chemistry class, but it's like related to that information.
You can do something with that.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. That's why astronauts have crunchy foods on the space stations, because if you go too long and you only eat mushy foods, your teeth get sad.
That's literally why lettuce exists.
That is why lettuce exists. Is that a fact?
That I just came up with.
You just decided iceberg lettuce exists.
Yeah, because it doesn't
crunchy.
taste like anything.
Yeah.
It's just literally just the crunch. It's crunch water.
It's crunch. Yeah, it's crunch water. Yeah, it's happy leaves.
Yeah. All right, that's all I had. Any questions for us?
I don't know. Which question should I have?
We just started doing that.
We just started asking if we had questions for you.
We started that on this trip, this visit.
What did other people say?
New bit.
A couple people were like, "What's the best advice you've ever heard?" A couple people.
What surprised you about?
Here? M+C?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I love those questions. What surprised you about M+C?
Jack.
Quick, make something up.
I just used it. I pivoted and just said how great Nadja was.
You could tell me how great I am. That'd be perfect. That'd be a perfect answer.
You can't do it to your face.
No, yeah.
Can you imagine? Come on, Stevie. I mean, listen, as someone who fishes for compliments constantly, I know exactly what you just did. Yeah, that's why I make TikToks. At Jack Gerard 3.
Have you asked other people how they keep up with culture, and what was their answer? And was it insomnia?
Yeah, I asked.
No, they're insomnia.
No one's out of the proverbial insomnia closet. Not yet, but I talked to Juan about, like, he's in the sport and entertainment special group, and he was like, yeah, social media and just like the news and like talking to his friends is how he keeps up with culture.
Interesting.
Like in very organic ways. Like it doesn't feel like it's forced.
Yeah.
Just like in your normal
You just
routine.
have to like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. What's the coolest thing you think is happening, most interesting thing happening in culture right now? And it can't be the KitchenAid butter mixer.
The color of the year.
I know that's what you want to say.
In culture, I don't know what's going on in culture.
Tell me something I don't know about. That's what I'm looking for.
I don't know about ad agencies.
Do you know about the Costco guys?
Costco guys are fun.
Oh, are they like? What do? They go shop
Costco
at Costco?
guys is you heard of the Rizzler?
No.
Wow. Yeah. This is so the
That's a
they're
whole
huge.
thing you can.
Is this a contest we're having now where you can like say things that like are like? Do you know about Stick Nation?
No.
It's a place where you can share your cool stick you found.
No.
Do you know about?
Which is like so many people want to do that.
Yeah, it's like the subculture though. Like the Costco guys, it's a dad and his son who's like probably like 10 years old.
Okay.
And they just completely blew up on TikTok, starting from just going to Costco and talking about Costco food, and then they do like their reviews pretty much, and it's either a boom or a doom, and it's very much taken the internet by storm. And then you make all these memes about it, and people go on crazy tangents. But then they introduce this character called the Rizzler.
Okay.
And the Rizzler is also like an 8-year-old child, but he's hilarious.
Okay.
He kind of feels like he's a much mature person in like a little kid's body. He's just like built for the camera. He's so funny. He's got these mannerisms. He does this. It's just it's crazy.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. I mean, I know Costco as a cultural thing has been like on the like you can't escape it. I think it's because you have this like confluence of baby boomers who are all like getting like to the point in their lives where they're even more cost conscious, and we're hitting like an economic like it's like one of those things where they say like, oh, this is the sign of the economic collapse because like everybody's shopping at Costco now, or we're like, you know, the price of eggs or whatever. Because I did see the other day there was also like a special line at Costco for the eggs.
Wow.
Because it's coming for Costco too, but it's just like this whole Costco cult that's like emerging. It's been maybe decades in the making, but like suddenly it's like a whole thing. And the hot dogs, the Costco hot dogs are like a thing too. They're like the Arizona iced tea of hot dogs.
Oh right, but the one of the advocates for that internally just retired, so there's speculation.
The hot dog advocate.
Yeah, it's like a CFO maybe, or somebody that's like in finance just retired. That was the long time. Like we're keeping it the same price.
Doesn't that feel anti-American to like raise the price of Costco hot dogs? Like that's our most American food.
People will go up, and they will get mad if they change that.
If they change that, people will riot.
People will they probably will riot.
Wow.
Yeah.
I see. I've learned something.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stevie. This has been wonderful.